Breaking news. A top security official claims that Ukraine twisted rope based on Putin's red lines in order to hang the imperial body. Ukraine has twisted the rope of all of Russian dictator Vladimir Putin's red lines to hang the Russian imperial corpse, said Oleksiy Danilov, the secretary of Ukraine's National Defense and Security Council, on July 20. Danilov stressed that there is only one appropriate response to Russian attacks on peaceful cities: an armed attack on Russian invaders on Ukrainian territory. Ukraine's only response to missile strikes on peaceful cities and the killing of civilians is to increase the number and scale of the military's strikes against the occupying forces, he said. Ukrainians have, long since gathered together all of Putin's red lines, twisted a rope from them on which to hang the Russian imperial corpse, as the saying goes. The official warned that the Russians would be in for a lot of trouble. From the drone fleet itself, as well as the drone army, Odessa-based members of the Banned Party of Regions and the opposition platform For Life party heard Danilov speak on two separate occasions. Their crawling on the Kremlin carpet had finally brought the Russian world to Odessa, he said. For the third night in a row, Russian invaders have pounded the southern cities of Odessa and Mykolaiv. Russia attacked Odessa and Kornomorsk's port facilities during the night of July 19–20, causing damage to grain and oil terminals. According to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, 60,000 tons of grain destined for China was destroyed in the Russian attack. 2 civilians were killed and 8 others were injured as a result of the violence in Odessa, Ukraine. Repeatedly, Russia's leader has stated that his country has reached its limit on revolutions. According to a new report from the Institute for the Study of War, Russian President Vladimir Putin displayed his knowledge of Russian history at odd moments, this time appearing to warn against the possibility of revolution in Russia, on Wednesday. When a recent Mayovka incident was brought up in a meeting, Putin revealed some of his current thinking. Putin seemed to focus on the latter, expressing a desire to avoid a revolution, despite the fact that the term Mayovka has been associated with both innocuous springtime activities and revolutionary dissidents. Noting that the name worried him, he expressed hope that this wouldn't lead to a revolution, as reported by RBC. Putin said, "The limit on revolutions in our country has already been exhausted in the last century," referring to the last century, which included the fall of the Soviet Union, which he has called the greatest geopolitical tragedy of the 20th century. The Russian president is a history buff, albeit one who may not always be reading the same book. He frequently uses it in his speeches. Putin has been seen by the world repeatedly appealing to historical precedent in an effort to justify his actions. For instance, he claimed that Ukraine didn't exist in the past because it wasn't on a map from the 17th century. There was a big, bold, lettered Ukraine that he failed to notice. This aspect of his personality has been on display in his revisionist justifications for the war in Ukraine, the Kremlin's comparisons of the battles for Bakhmut and Stalingrad, and, most recently, his comments on the Wagner mutinies' parallels to the revolution of 1917. On June 24, Putin said, "This is a stab in the back of our country and our people," after his longtime ally Yevgeny Prigozhin led an armed mutiny against the Ministry of Defense. The revolt was shocking, and it could have led to violence in the Russian capital of Moscow if it hadn't been diffused from the outside. It occurred as Russia was facing a Ukrainian counteroffensive that threatened its hold on captured territory. Putin said, such a blow was dealt to Russia in 1917, when the country was waging the First World War, adding, but victory was stolen from it. Putin, who has maintained an unusually tight grip on power, vowed that, "We won't let this happen again," in response to this shocking challenge to the Kremlin's authority. Putin has ruled Russia in some capacity for the past 23 years, and he recently signed a law extending his tenure in office by another 13 years. According to RBC, Putin's comments on the possibility of a revolution in Russia on Wednesday echoed those he made in 2021, when he said that the country had seen enough uprisings. Russia, Putin said at the time, exhausted its limit on revolutions back in the 20th century. No more uprisings, please. We seek a steady rise in the quality of life in our nation and in our society. This is what I'm crossing my fingers for.